Hello, and welcome to the CDO Magazine viewing audience. We are here for another installment of the CDO Magazine Executive Interview Series. Today, I'm joined by Mike Anderson, who's the Chief Digital Officer and the Chief Information Officer of Netskope. My name is Kirk Ball, and I'm the Chief Information Officer of Worldpay. So I want to switch gears a little bit. I know you've been championing this concept of customer zero. So what does that actually look like day to day? And how does it shape how you support the field and customers?
So it's a great question. I'm very passionate about our customer zero program. 'Cause I think as a technology company, you have to drink your own champagne and you should drink it and taste it just like a sommelier
Yeah.
is tasting the wines. If I'm the winemaker, I'm tasting the wine before I bottle it. And so we need to be tasting the wine before we package it up and ship it to our customers. And so, and what that means sometimes is we may find something that doesn't work quite right, but it's better for us to find it than our customers find those type of things. One of the things our CEO says is you innovate or die as a technology company. And so we have over half of our resources, half of our people focused on engineering and R&D. And so when you look at that, it's that's what's exciting about being customer zero, because I always tell people I benefit. I don't know what all of our products cost in the market. People ask me that, what should I expect to budget? I have some directional ideas based on the fact that my team runs a quotation platform, but I know what the capabilities are. And so, what that does is, for example, digital experience management. One of my exciting products that my team has been really using that to identify where is the problem that a user is having. Is it on their device? Is it something in their local network? If they're working from home, is it their Wi-Fi? Is it because they've got some type of private VPN connected on their home network because they feel like they want to privatize all their home traffic and that's creating bad routing? Is it their local, telco that they're working with that provides the internet connectivity to their home? Is it Netskope that's causing a problem? Is it past Netscope to the application provider themselves? Where is the actual problem? And I think, you can appreciate what that is. A lot of times our service desk teams spend the majority of the time trying to pinpoint where the problem is. And then once they find it, it's and know where to apply pressure. It's a lot you get to resolution quickly. But that whole time you're trying to do all the whack-a-mole, that's where, you have a user that's just trying to get their job done and they're not being productive. And
Yeah.
so digital experience management has been a godsend for my level one help desk to be able to do that troubleshooting for all their products. When I think about analytics, I'm a data junkie by background. I love data. And so looking at analytics around, what AI tools people are using, those questions that I said earlier about justify why you need access to something, being able to look at what people say, filtering out some of the things when people don't say things you would prefer them not to type into a text box. But there a lot of times you get some information that can be very usable. And so, the key thing, what I really like is going back to the comment I made around finding things where customers do, is we can provide feedback directly to our product teams and say, if you fix this, it's going to help us drive more value for our customers. Or have you thought about this feature? Because that's something that will really help us make this, even more rich. Or have we thought about this integration to this third party? That would, I always think about integrations as how does 1 + 1 equal something more than two? So how do we create those symbiotic partner alliances with companies like CrowdStrike and Okta, those companies we work with today? How can those be leveraged within because as we use those products ourselves, how can we make those even richer so our customers benefit from that as well?
Yeah, I think that concept of being able to see what your customers see and catching incidents before they do is incredibly important. And I've seen in the past in other places that I've worked where being able to do that, it improves the net promoter score. Whether it be the internal net promoter score or the external net promoter score, it's a big deal. It really is. All right, Mike, I've got two more topics for you, and then we'll wrap. This has been an awesome conversation. So, I think within Netskope, you've partnered with the CISO to converge IT and security through a product operating model. I'm interested here about this. Talk a little bit about that partnership and how did it impact your outcomes?
Yeah, it's often we always hear that IT and security, a lot of times networking and security are not aligned, or infrastructure and security aren't
Yep.
aligned in an organization. I think we hear that all the time. And oftentimes what we say is like as CIOs, well, I get along great with the CISO. And the challenge is, as we start moving down the organization and our teams, that's oftentimes where the friction is occurring. And oftentimes it's the infrastructure teams feel like they keep giving up budget because security needs to go invest in something new. And so there's that inherent friction that's there. One of the areas, so when I sat with our CISO, we said, let's change our operating model. Because we're a product company, and our CISO's remit is broader than mine because he's got product security and in enterprise security both. We're peers. We looked at how do we create a different model. And so the first area we looked at was the identity and access management. And so when we looked at the how things operated today, I had responsibility for identity, single sign-on, multi-factor authentication. He had responsibility for identity governance administration. Privilege access management was one that kind of sat on the fence. And so he said, what if we converge identity and access management into one product fusion team? Let's start with that. Let's bring those teams together. Let's have one person act as the product owner. Let's have dual architects, both from an IT and security standpoint, as part of that team. We looked at what other skills we needed, and we said, you collectively as a team own the outcome of delivering on our identity and access management capability. We looked at some of the outcomes we looked at was 25% of our service requests coming into our help desk, which, today at Netskope, we've got over 3,500 end users. We get about 60,000 service requests a year that come into our help desk. We found that 25% of those service requests were user application access related. So one of the outcomes is how can we drive that number down? We also looked at, user access reviews and how we do user access reviews. There was a lot of inefficiency in that process. So how do we improve the accuracy and the timeliness of user access review? So those were two of the key outcomes that we focused on. For the first year. So we brought those teams together. They run just like a product team would in software development. They're working on sprints. They're doing sprints. They're doing daily stand-ups. They're doing retrospectives. And what we've seen is we've been able to move very quickly. We had to make a selection of a new identity governance solution. We were able to kind of coalesce those teams together. They kind of did the storming, forming, storming, noring, phase. So, once we got past that, they selected a solution. We implemented the new solution in less than 90 days from the time we signed contract, which is a very fast pace. But within 90 days, we got every SOX in scope application into this new process in 90 days. So that's a huge outcome for the organization based on those things I described. And so now, as we're moving to how do we create a secure endpoint? That's the secure endpoint team is the next team. Then we're looking at how do we create a secure workplace is the third team we'll have. And in each one of those, so if I look at the endpoint team, it's how do we take things like CrowdStrike, the tools like our endpoint management? How do we take all those kind of capabilities, our patching of endpoints? How do we bring all that together to create that secure computing team that can emulate what we've done on the identity and access management? So I'm excited about that because we no longer have the waste in the process. And as we know, where we get inefficiency is handoffs between teams. And so I'm super excited about, that piece. We actually submitted the talk. We'll see if it gets selected for RSA for our CISO and I to talk about. I think the topic is the product operating models, not just for software. So hopefully we'll get to share the story at RSA.
Good. Okay, one last topic. So you're hearing a lot of buzz coming down the pike about quantum compute. It's coming. You can argue how far away it is, how mature is it, what are the use cases, et cetera. In the business that Netskope is in, clearly that's something you're going to have to pay attention to. So talk a little bit about how you guys are thinking, or are you thinking about post-quantum threats, or is it still a little bit too early?
Yeah, so I would say it's not too early. The main reason why, and I've been going around the country talking about this, is this whole concept of harvest now, decrypt later. And so we're seeing threat actors, especially nation states, is grabbing as much data as they can and not even worrying about decrypting it. And what they're doing is they're just storing it and saying at some point they're going to go decrypt all this data using quantum, and there's probably going to be something of value. And so what I've been encouraging people to think about is what data in their organization would deliver the most harm, or could the most reputational harm, financial harm for their organization if it were to get decrypted. Now, I caution people and say, if you say my financials and you're publicly traded, we're probably 3 to 5 years out from this becoming a reality. I would say conservatively, say three, let's take that 3 year number. So if it's 3 years from now and you're publicly traded and it's financials, it's already going to be in the public domain by that point. So it's probably not a
Right.
high risk. So you probably have some more time. The second piece to think about is which type of encryption is most at risk. So we have basically the single key encryption, which is what we use for a lot of data at rest. So we think about AES encryption. I always say, look, think about AES 512 or higher. The higher you can get from that standpoint, the better you're going to be. Obviously, the bigger the longer the keys, the longer it takes to actually encrypt the data. So take performance considerations, but 512 should be your floor. The the other thing that I tell people is that's more concerning is data that's in motion. So when you think about all of our SSL today, which is basically public private key encryption, that's what's most at risk of harvest not encrypt later attacks. And it's very easy to go, even the models that are out there today can very quickly break what we have today from a data in transit. And so we're telling people is that's the area you got to focus on first. And NIST published some standards earlier back in January this year. They published some algorithms you could use for doing encryption of data using quantum. And so we've aligned to that. We actually are going into beta this month with our quantum encryption for data in motion for our customers. And that again, there are performance things to take into account. So you can't apply it to all traffic, but things where you have extremely sensitive information flowing, that's where you probably want to apply that type of encryption decryption is today. And so that's the area I tell people to focus on. Financial services, this is, I was in Japan earlier this year, and I sat down with the CISO of a large bank that's one of our customers, and they specifically said, what are you doing in this area? And they were actually leading a FSISAC chapter in Tokyo around this very topic. And so it's been very topical for all the major banks. And so that they're driving and helping us as design partners on the solution we're bringing to market. So don't wait. Start at a minimum, start doing an inventory of all your different encryption you have today.
Yeah.
And start getting ready and start thinking about the roadmap. And maybe there's a system that you've never been able to say the juice is worth the squeeze. Well, maybe quantum is now the reason that it's worth the squeeze. So take a look at that in light of what you're doing from an encryption standpoint.
Yeah, Mike, thank you for the conversation today. I've really enjoyed it. Two things always happen when I get a chance to spend time with you. I learned something new and I come away with an idea that I need to think about in the job that I do. So both of those things have occurred again. So, and I think, to our CDO magazine audience, I would encourage you to check out this video interview and go back and really noodle on the concepts that Mike has talked about, the recommendations that he's made. And I think you get a sense of the way that Netskope is really thinking about, how to help organizations secure their environment, secure their network. And the fact that you guys are really forward future thinking, I think that's one of the things that impresses me most about Netskope. So again, I want to thank you, encourage our audience to go check out the video interview as it gets out on the CDO magazine site. And Mike, I've really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.